Welcome to the Quantum AI Coach podcast. I'm Gina, founder of Virtual World Coaching Academy.
Usually when you reach the absolute pinnacle of your career, there's this built-in expectation of relief,
Oh, for sure.
right? It's like you're finishing this grueling uphill marathon. You cross that tape, and someone hands you a cup of water, they drape one of those shiny foil blankets over your shoulders, and you finally, blessedly, just get to stop running.
Yeah, you've mastered your craft, built the portfolio, secured the high-end clients.
Exactly. You are officially an expert.
Right. And we are, culturally conditioned to expect the reward of stillness at that stage.
Yes.
It's supposed to be binary. You put in the decade of brutal work, you arrive at the destination, and you get to rest and enjoy the view.
But then you step into the actual reality of modern high-level entrepreneurship or
Yeah.
consulting or, frankly, any high-stakes field today. And suddenly that finish line just vanishes.
It completely disappears.
You look around and realize you aren't at the end of a marathon at all. You're just standing on a much faster, much steeper treadmill.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
And the landscape around you is completely murky. Like
Yeah.
instead of a medal, someone hands you a spreadsheet and says, okay, great, now prove your ROI again.
Right, but do it faster.
Yeah, faster and cheaper than the other 10 experts pitching this exact same project.
It is the absolute definition of what the source material we're examining today calls the expert cage.
The expert cage.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating and honestly terrifying paradox because from the outside, the expert cage looks exactly like success.
Oh, totally. You have the revenue, the title, the respect.
But inside that cage, the lived experience is just this perpetual, exhausting motion.
Exactly. And that is exactly why we're pulling apart this specific source text today for our deep dive. Because if you listening to this right now, if you have ever felt stuck in that specific cage, this is going to be incredibly relevant.
Absolutely.
Because if you find yourself constantly competing, constantly hustling, and just utterly exhausted by trying to prove your value to people who frankly aren't even in your league, well, we need to decode why.
Yeah, we really do.
So, the core argument we are analyzing today suggests that hustling harder is the exact mechanism leaving elite professionals burned out. And the only way out is a radical shift towards something called frequency coherence.
And that shift is vital because the text makes a profound foundational argument right away.
Which is?
That the exhaustion you're feeling, it isn't because your business strategy is flawed.
Right.
You probably have a brilliant strategy. The exhaustion is happening because your fundamental identity is misaligned with where you're trying to go.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the source starts with a pretty massive reframe of how we even view success and client acquisition.
It really does.
It argues that the fundamental flaw in our modern working culture is this relentless hustle for results energy. Like we're told to grind, to optimize every hour, to create the perfect deliverables.
Yeah, the standard advice.
Right. But the text uses a phrase here that made me pause. It says, we need to look at this from a quantum perspective.
Oh, I knew you were going to bring that up.
I mean, I'll be honest, my immediate reaction was a bit skeptical. Quantum field sounds a little, metaphysical for a discussion about high-stakes business strategy. What does this actually mean in practical terms?
It's a completely fair pushback. When you hear quantum, it's easy to think of crystal shops rather than corporate boardrooms.
Exactly.
But strip away the metaphysical connotations for a second and just look at it purely as behavioral economics and neurobiology. The text states that in the quantum field, you don't get what you want, you get who you are.
Meaning what mechanically?
Mechanically, it means your baseline state of being precedes your actions.
Okay.
Most professionals out there are actively trying to build a category of one business. They want to be incomparable, right? The absolute top of their field.
Right.
But internally, their nervous system and their self-concept are still holding tightly to a service provider identity.
Oh, wow.
So when you want a client, you operate from a deficit. Your posture, your tone, your negotiating flexibility, everything chemically signals scarcity.
And people pick up on that.
Yes. The client's nervous system picks up on that friction, that underlying desperation, even if your pitch deck is absolutely flawless.
So it's not about magic. It's about the fact that people can literally smell the hustle.
Exactly.
It means you're still showing up to every high-level interaction trying to prove you're worth the invoice. I was reading this and thinking, trying to prove your value by arguing over ROI is like a Michelin star chef stepping out of the kitchen to justify the cost of their ingredients.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Right, to justify it to someone who just walked in wanting fast food. You aren't just using the wrong vocabulary, you're having the wrong conversation entirely.
You really are.
The chef doesn't argue, because the chef fundamentally assumes the value of the experience, and that assumption changes their physical posture.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that assumption of value is exactly what the text means by a shift in frequency.
Right.
If you're a Michelin star chef, you don't stand out on the sidewalk handing out 2-for-1 discount flyers.
No, definitely not.
Your presence, the environment you cultivate, the unapologetic standard of your work that does the heavy lifting. The source argues that to join the new elite, you must shift your identity from providing ROI, which is what an expert does, to embodying the outcome.
Embodying the outcome.
Yeah.
Not just delivering a spreadsheet that promises a result, but actually being the physical representation of that result.
Precisely. And to illustrate this, the source uses an incredibly clarifying metaphor, the boat versus the lighthouse.
Yes, this is where the concept really clicked for me. Walk us through the mechanics of the boat first.
So think about the operational reality of a boat. A boat is out on the water, actively hunting. It's looking for ships to guide or fish to catch.
Right. Constantly moving.
Exactly. To do that, the captain is constantly adjusting the sails, reacting to the wind, fighting the current, and burning fuel.
Okay, so in a business context.
In a business context, the boat is the expert who is constantly revising proposals, dropping their prices to match competitors, or trying to learn every new software trend just to stay relevant.
Oh, man. That sounds exhausting.
It is entirely at the mercy of market shifts. It is exhausting to be a boat because your entire existence is reactionary. You are always chasing.
You're burning massive amounts of energy adapting to an environment that doesn't care about you. You're trying to control the ocean.
Right. But contrast that with a lighthouse. A lighthouse doesn't hunt for ships. It doesn't jump into the water and frantically swim after a boat that's sailing past it.
That would be a ridiculous visual.
It would. It simply remains coherent, visible, and stationary. It knows exactly what it is. It generates a massive amount of light, and the right ships, the ones that actually need guidance, navigate to it.
The boat is the expert, constantly hustling, pivoting, and trying to prove its worth. And the lighthouse is the new elite, just standing in its power, embodying the outcome.
Yes.
It sounds so incredibly peaceful.
It does sound peaceful, but choosing to be that lighthouse isn't just like a simple mindset swap that you journal about over coffee.
Obviously not, or everyone would do it.
Exactly. When you actually try to stop hustling, when you try to drop the oars and just stand still, your body physically revolts. And that is a huge focus of this material.
Which brings us to the psychological reality of this shift, because the text doesn't just leave this as a neat metaphor.
No, it goes deep.
It dives into something called the Lisa Bloom framework, and it shares a really visceral, almost uncomfortable story to illustrate the intense resistance we face when we try to become the lighthouse.
Ah, the London photo shoot story.
Yes.
This is where the beautiful theory of the lighthouse hits the concrete reality of the human nervous system.
Right, so let's lay out the scenario for everyone. The author books this incredibly high-end, extremely expensive photo shoot in London.
We're talking nightlights in the city, power poses, luxury styling.
Yeah, it is the kind of polished, unapologetic visibility that just screams authority.
Right.
And consciously, on the surface, they're thrilled. They are fully stepping into the lighthouse identity. But the night before the shoot, they have this intense, unsettling dream.
It manifests as a hyper-specific logistical nightmare.
Yes. In the dream, they arrive at the station, and every single train to London is suddenly canceled.
Or total panic.
Panic sets in. They pull out their phone to check the transit app for an alternative route, and the screen just goes completely black. A total technological and logistical blackout.
Oh, stressful.
And they wake up in a cold sweat with this quiet, heavy, sinking feeling in their gut.
What's fascinating here is how the author analyzes that heavy feeling using this Lisa Bloom framework,
Right.
which is essentially a diagnostic tool for understanding internal friction.
Because the twist here is that an older version of this author, the expert version, would have taken that blackout dream as a literal metaphysical sign from the universe.
Oh, absolutely.
They would have woken up and said, oh, the trains are canceled in my dream, the app went black, my gut feels terrible. This clearly means it's not meant to be.
I'm pushing too hard.
Exactly. I shouldn't go to London. I'll cancel the shoot and wait until the timing flows better.
which is an incredibly common, incredibly insidious way we rationalize our own fear.
Yeah.
We outsource our self-sabotage to the universe just to avoid taking responsibility for shrinking back into our comfort zone.
Exactly. But because they were utilizing this framework as they sat with this heavy feeling, they realized it wasn't a metaphysical warning about British public transit.
No.
The trains, in reality, were running perfectly on schedule. The blackout wasn't external. It was entirely internal.
It was their own nervous system pulling the emergency brake.
And this is where I want to challenge the premise a bit, or, at least dig deeper.
Sure.
So is this just standard imposter syndrome? Because anyone who has ever tried something new has felt that voice saying, you don't belong here?
Yeah.
Or is the text arguing that there's a distinct mechanical difference when your current reality actively tries to cancel the route to the new you?
It's a crucial distinction. And yes, there is a distinct mechanical difference. Imposter syndrome is primarily cognitive.
Okay.
It's a thought pattern. You doubt your accomplishments, or you worry people will find out you aren't as smart as they think you are. It happens in the neocortex, in the mind.
Right, the typical self-doubt stuff.
Yeah. But what the source is describing with the London blackout dream is physiological and existential. It's an identity clash.
An identity clash. Walk me through the mechanics of that.
So your current identity, the boat identity that has kept you safe and successful for years, perceives this new level of unapologetic visibility, this lighthouse status, as a literal threat to its survival.
Wow, a threat to its survival.
Yeah. To become the lighthouse, the boat captain has to die, metaphorically speaking. The problem is the older, deeper parts of your brain, your amygdala, your nervous system, they do not know the difference between a metaphorical death of the ego and a physical death of the body.
Oh man, it just registers a threat to the organism.
Exactly. It sees you stepping into massive visibility, which historically meant standing out from the tribe and risking physical exile, and it panics.
That makes so much sense.
So it doesn't just give you doubtful thoughts. It creates blackout dreams. It creates intense physical anxiety, nausea, or sudden extreme fatigue. It actively tries to cancel the route to the new you just to keep you safely inside the familiar confines of the boat.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the text grounds this deeply in biology. It references the work of neuroscientist Dr. Joe Dispenza to explain exactly why the body fights the mind so aggressively during this transition.
Yes, Dr. Dispenza's work focuses heavily on how the body chemically memorizes our emotional states until the body literally becomes the mind.
How does that biochemical loop operate for someone trapped in the expert cage?
Well, think about how you've operated to get to this high level of success. You have spent years conditioning your body to the stress of competing.
Right. Hustling every day.
Your hypothalamus has been pumping out peptides associated with the adrenaline rush of the hustle. Your cells are bathed in the cortisol spike of defending your ROI to a skeptical corporate client.
Oh, wow.
And then you get the dopamine hit of finally closing that hard-fought deal. You run that loop thousands of times over a decade, and your cellular receptors physically adapt to require those stress hormones just to feel normal.
It sounds like our nervous systems are literally allergic to peace because they've developed a biological addiction to the adrenaline of the hustle.
That is precisely the mechanism. If your body is chemically addicted to the stress of the boat, it will naturally, biologically reject the peace of the lighthouse.
Because it feels unnatural to be calm.
Yes. When
Yeah.
you finally decide to stop hustling, stop hunting, and start just embodying the outcome, your body goes into actual chemical withdrawal.
That is wild.
Your nervous system looks around and says, wait, my heart isn't racing. We aren't fighting for our lives to close a client today. Something must be terribly wrong. Send the blackout dreams.
Yeah.
Generate anxiety. Get us back in the boat where it's safe.
Wow. That reframes so much of the entrepreneurial struggle. It's not that you lack willpower. It's that you are fighting a biochemical withdrawal from stress. So how on earth do we fix that? If our own cellular biology is fighting us, how do we actually build the architecture to overcome it?
The structural solution the source provides is building what it calls legacy infrastructure.
Legacy infrastructure.
Yes. This is defined as the intentional alignment between your private depth and your public authority.
Private depth and public authority. Let's make that concrete for the listener. What does building that actually look like?
It means you must architect a business model, pricing, and operational boundaries that actively serve your life's work and your nervous system, rather than demanding that your life's work endlessly serves your business overhead.
Okay, so flipping the dynamic.
You have to consciously shift your daily operational frequency from effort to coherence.
Coherence. There's that word again.
Yeah.
Frequency coherence.
Yes. Coherence happens when your internal values perfectly match your external offer. There is no friction. You aren't pretending to be bigger than you are, and you aren't shrinking yourself to fit a client's budget.
You aren't straining or pushing.
Exactly. You are coherent. And when you achieve that alignment, your nervous system finally feels safe enough to stand still, and you create an undisruptible category of one.
Undisruptible. Which leads us to the final and perhaps most urgent part of this analysis. Because the text pairs this beautiful, introspective concept of the lighthouse with a very real, very external existential threat.
Yeah, it does.
If you don't do this, you might not have a business in 5 years.
The threat of AI obsolescence.
Exactly. The warning the author gives is stark. In an age of artificial intelligence, expertise is rapidly, inevitably becoming a commodity.
It is unavoidable. If your entire value proposition to a client is based on knowing things or executing a repeatable process, you are on a very short runway.
Yeah.
An AI algorithm can already map a process, optimize a sales funnel, or write code exponentially faster, cheaper, and with fewer errors than you can.
Which is terrifying for a lot of people.
The expert who just delivers a roadmap is no longer the highly valued moat it used to be.
But the text argues that identity, your unique frequency, your specific lived experience, the coherence of your presence, that is the only asset that cannot be duplicated by a machine.
Absolutely.
An algorithm can give me a recipe, but it cannot be the Michelin star chef.
Great callback.
So, for the listener who recognizes they need to survive this shift, the source outlines a very practical 3-step practice to audit yourself today. To figure out right now if you are running on boat energy or lighthouse energy.
The first step in this audit is to identify the vocabulary. Language dictates frequency.
Okay.
If you are constantly using words that imply chasing, proving, or defending your price, you are a boat. To stop this, you have to brutally audit the words you use in your marketing and your sales calls.
Give me an example of boat vocabulary versus lighthouse vocabulary.
Well, if you are relying on the same industry jargon as everyone else, words like synergy, optimization, deliverables, or ROI, you are commoditizing yourself. You sound like every other boat in the water. A lighthouse defines its own terms. You must create and own your own frameworks, just like the Lisa Bloom framework we discussed earlier.
It goes back to the chef. The Michelin star chef doesn't use the vocabulary of a fast food franchise. They don't talk about speed of service. They talk about culinary narrative. It changes the whole paradigm.
Exactly. Step 2 is to audit your value. You have to sit down and ask yourself a hard, potentially painful question. Are you selling a process, which is what an expert does, or are you selling an identity, which is what the new elite do?
Now, I want to jump in here with a very practical dilemma.
Sure, go ahead.
Because this sounds great in theory, but what does this all mean for the listener right now who is facing a corporate client tomorrow morning?
Right.
How do you actually sell an identity instead of a process when clients are so deeply culturally conditioned to buy step-by-step roadmaps? If I'm a high-level consultant asking for a $100,000 contract, the procurement team wants to know exactly what I'm going to do for them.
They want the deliverables.
Yeah. If I just sit there and say, I'm selling who I am, I'm going to be laughed out of the room. Doesn't this lighthouse concept risk becoming an excuse for not delivering tangible work?
This raises an important question, and it highlights the exact friction of this transition. Selling an identity does not mean you stop doing the work or that you abandon deliverables.
Okay.
Embodying the outcome means your very presence and your coherence become the primary value that secures the trust. You aren't eliminating the process entirely, but the process is no longer the focal point of the sale. You stop defending the steps and start standing in the certainty of the result.
So they aren't buying the roadmap, they are buying proximity to the destination.
Precisely. When you are a true lighthouse, the people who desperately need your light don't ask to see the engineering blueprints of how your light bulb works before they steer their ship away from the rocks.
That is such a good point.
They just navigate by your light because it is undeniable. When you are so completely embodying the result they want, the need to aggressively defend your price or chase the client simply vanishes. Wow. The value is self-evident in your posture, your clarity, and your coherence.
That is a massive paradigm shift. It requires you to stop trying to convince people and start trusting that the right people will simply recognize the frequency.
And that is exactly why the internal work, the nervous system regulation we discussed with Dr. Dispenza's theories, is the absolute prerequisite.
You can't skip it.
You cannot fake that frequency. If you are a terrified boat captain standing on the shore pretending to be a lighthouse, the client's nervous system will feel the hustle underneath the
We'll
surface.
smell it.
Yes. Step 3 is to command your space. The text says you must make one decision this week based on where you are going, not where you have been. You have to take an action that forces you to act from the lighthouse identity, even while the boat identity is screaming in withdrawal.
So to pull all of these threads together, the journey we've mapped out today starts with recognizing the exhaustion of the expert cage. That treadmill trap where you're constantly defending your ROI. We saw through the Lisa Bloom framework that when you try to escape that cage and step into massive visibility, your body will likely trigger a blackout.
It will fight you.
But that resistance isn't a cosmic sign to stop. It's a mechanical, biological sign of growth. It's your nervous system reacting to the necessary death of the old, smaller identity.
And we explored the underlying science of that resistance. We mapped the necessity of rewiring the body's literal chemical connection to the stress hormones of the hustle.
Right.
The goal is to move from the frantic, reactionary, chasing energy of a hunting boat to the grounded, coherent, magnetic power of a stationary lighthouse.
And we established that building this legacy infrastructure where your business model is actually designed to support your nervous system and your life's work isn't just some luxurious self-care idea. It is a strategic imperative.
Absolutely.
In the age of AI, where your technical process can be replicated in seconds, your coherent identity is the only unhackable asset you have left.
It is the ultimate undisruptible differentiator.
If this perspective on frequency coherence shifted something in your internal architecture today, then signal that to the field. Hit the like button not for the algorithm, but as a marker of your own alignment. Subscribe and hit the bell notification to ensure you don't drop back into the expert frequency.
I love that.
But let's be honest, insight without integration is just more expert noise. You can't think your way out of a nervous system pattern.
No, you really can't.
This is why I want to point you toward Gina Pickersgill, the founder of the Virtual World Coaching Academy. Gina doesn't just talk about strategy. She facilitates the exact identity shift we've been discussing.
She does amazing work.
She runs the Heal Your Money Wounds workshops. This is where the legacy infrastructure we talked about actually gets built. It's for the entrepreneur who knows they are capped not by their marketing, but by what their system feels safe holding.
Exactly. What old expert imprint or money wound is currently acting as a glass ceiling on your lighthouse potential?
If you are ready to stop breaking through ceilings and start expanding your capacity to receive, the link to join Gina's next workshop is in the description below.
Highly recommend checking that out.
Remember, the new elite don't compete. They architect. Stop being the boat. Be the lighthouse. I'll see you in the next deep dive.
So when Gina offered me the opportunity to do this, I jumped for it because I think anything that you can do that is going to chip away at these limiting the beliefs of things that hold you back is really, really worth doing. So it's been a really lovely experience, and if anybody's a bit worried about it, just do it, because the opportunity to connect through havening is really, really powerful. It's really, really powerful.
But really helpful, I think, in terms of having that kind of guided process just to kind of let the ideas and the feelings and the images flow, and then try and work out what it actually means afterwards, and to come up with, and it made intuitive sense. It's really, really helpful to then kind of have that debrief of, okay, what can we actually do with this stuff? Because that's where we tend to get stuck, is kind of like coming out of it going, oh, this is all some really interesting ideas and thoughts and feelings and images. But yeah, then, you know, how can we actually harness them to do something different? And I think that's been really, really helpful in terms of clarifying really what I need to prioritize to go forward in a way that will deal with some of that stuff that came up.
I would like to point out that I'm actually a therapist myself, and sometimes therapists also need a therapist. So I was really stuck, and then one day a friend posted a link for Gina's wealth and money attracting short course, and I went, this sounds great, I'm just gonna book it. And I loved it so much. I really had an epiphany on that course, and it was only meant to be a demonstration, and yet it was really it just opened up something, possibilities that I was stuck before, and now like, ooh, I can use this to unstuck myself. I'm a great believer that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And you appeared at the right time. That's all there is to it. So, if anybody's watching this video, it means Gina has appeared in your life. So please give it a try.
She walks where the sky meets the sea, a calm in the chaos, wild and free. Light